Last but not least, I would like to welcome Christopher Frauenberger. He will be talking about rethinking human-technology relationships for designing alternative futures.
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation. My name is Christopher Frauenberger. I'm a professor for human-computer interaction at the University of Salzburg. So I'm basically interested in designing technological futures, and that made me think more closely about how we conceptualize the relationship between humans and technology. And I want to start with a very old and well-known example from the science and technology studies. These are the bridges of Robert Moses, who was an urban architect in the 60s and 70s in New York, and he built a lot of public buildings, among those these bridges, and they turned out to be too low for any public transport to go under. And they were leading, so they were going over the highways that were leading to the best beaches around New York City, and at the time this basically resulted in not only a socio-economical but also racial segregation of these beaches. So only a very select group of people, the white upper class who had access to individual means of transport, were able to kind of travel under these bridges. And Langdon Winner in the 80s kind of used that example to ask the question whether artifacts have politics, and he sort of like led his argument to the affirmative, I would say. We see very, very similar examples in today's world, particularly with digital systems. This is one of many examples. It's a study that shows that a darker skin color is making it so much more likely for you to be kind of miscategorized as an object, in combination with self-driving cars, is a real problem. So we see very similar kind of mechanisms of technology shifting boundaries, redefining ontologies and people, and thereby also shifting power relationships. I really like the way kind of Melvin Kreutzberg kind of put it into words, that technology is neither good nor bad, but it's certainly not neutral. It always kind of shifts power relationships within our societies. And I think this is something that we need to be acutely aware, and we are made acutely aware now. I think with you being the speaker just before me, that was a good coincidence. There's so much data practice at the moment that really creates different realities for different people. What can we do about futures? Of course, we can just close our eyes and cover our ears and say, like, well, we do what we do because it works for some, and it's technologically exciting, and there is a sort of like technological opportunism that we see most prominently probably reflected in the innovation culture in the Silicon Valley. But I would argue that this has proven that it leads to kind of futures that many of us cannot want. My core argument here really is to kind of think about futures that we may want. We kind of need to engage with the question, what is our relationship to technology? And if we get that relationship right, that might lead the way towards the things that we can imagine as technological futures. So how we conceptualize that technology determines which technological futures we might be able to imagine. And there we have a number of different options so far. The first option, of course, is what Ray Kurzweil, for example, is one of the main prominent voices of that movement, is the transhumanism movement that kind of has the idea of human enhancement towards the singularity, merging, redefining what human means by technological means. And to me, that very much is sort of like giving up. and that's very not just because I think humans are so exceptional, and I will come to that in a moment, but I think it's also a very elitarian and unfair project. It's going to create huge differences between people who can afford this enhancement and become other better people or humans, and those who can't. So I'm just outright rejecting transhumanism as a possibility here. The second one that I want to kind of talk a little bit about is this idea of putting humanism at the center. And that is the idea of serving human needs. And I'm slightly skeptical about this notion of the human-technology relationship as well. It features anthropocentrism that I think kind of puts the human need at the center and relegates the material and the non-human world to the outside. And I think this is problematic for two reasons. One is that this kind of it makes tool use very passive. We're thinking about tools as being passive receivers of human intention. And only if we design them right, we can do whatever we humans want. And I think this in a world of the climate crisis is one of the biggest challenges to humanity. Might be too short-sighted. Another idea is attached to this, which is inscribing ethics into materials, into machines. And this is the logo of one of the most prominent examples of this. Is the Moral Machine is a project by the MIT trying to kind of figure out how they can program self-driving cars to kind of embed ethical decision-making. And I'm skeptical of that idea as well, mainly because I think how some of the values that we might agree on actually play out in action depends on how these machines and humans are configured. Depends on the action and the behaviors that are in there. So it really depends on so many things that on the ground it will be it goes not far enough to kind of think about what will happen. So what I'm going to propose here is like looking towards a range of theories and thinking models that are being kind of termed as a post-humanism, where humans and things become what they are through their relations. It's a radical shift from an ontological idea of entities towards a relational view of, we as humans become what we are through the tools that we give ourselves. And this is quite a radical shift because it kind of puts the relationality into the center of our attention. And I would argue that if you look back at history, this is what happened to humanity all along. Think about the fire as a technology that has made us a very different species. Look at the hammer or the pistol that again kind of made us into very different people. And so has the smartphone, and I'm arguing so will artificial intelligence. So the question here is that if all of these things that we help to bring into the world kind of also shape back who we are as humans, how do we get to the technologies that make us to the people that we would like to be? And this reorients our kind of ambition to kind of create and design technologies for desirable futures. We can think about more than human needs. What is it that creates these ontologies? What is it that we need to design? Is it actually artifacts that we need to design, or is it actually, do we need to kind of weave relationships and design relationships? It kind of it sheds a new light on basic principles like responsibilities, and we've just kind of completed written an article on this, how such a very fundamental term like responsibility shifts if you also shift this perspective on human-technology relationships. And it shifts towards something that, again, comes much more out of relationships rather than entities. It also has a very strong pointer towards politics, because if it is that technologies make us to sort of like the people we would want to be, then this is a very political question. And there's hardly anything that determines societies as much as digital technologies nowadays that is so far removed from any democratic kind of influence. So we have quite carelessly kind of privatized this interaction. So how do we configure participation around desired futures? How do we? I apologize that the slides seem to be cut off a little bit. This is a transition apparently from Keynote to PowerPoint that happened in here. Anyway, it's not the right font. That's why it's kind of cut off on the slides. But how do we actually create and configure these modes of participation that we can have a broader debate about our technological futures? And finally, I just want to, again, that's a bit cut off, but anyway, I want to kind of point out how does that translate into actual projects. This is a project that I'm currently doing in collaboration with colleagues from the TU Wien, and Caritas Wien and the Technical Museum in Wien, and we're asking, or we're investigating possible roles of robots in care. And to kind of have a relational idea of the human-technology relationship is actually inviting you to ask different questions. We're trying to avoid the question, what is needed? And have replaced that with the question of what is good care, and then trying to kind of configure new relationships between humans, caregivers, care receivers, other stakeholders, policymakers, family, etc., and non-humans like robots, documentation systems, and other non-humans in being involved in creating what we believe is good care. And what is also important to note here is that the notion of good care is something political. It's something that we need to agree on. It's something that we want to, and that's also why the Technical Museum is on board here, because we want to kind of take this question of what is good care in our future society out towards the public. So this might be one way of how these rather abstract and theoretical thoughts could be translated into actual designing technologies. And with that, I'd like to thank you.